Hello humans, today I want to talk about this guy right here. This is the Cold Steel Large Luzon? Luzon? I'm not entirely sure I'm supposed to pronounce that. But this is a bit of a big knife. If you know anything about cold steel packaging, they have the incredible ability to make a knife fit in the smallest box possible, the same way they are extremely capable of making a knife absolutely disappear in your pocket. And this is going to be an example of that because this is my new longest knife. I'm not kidding. It has a 6-inch blade length, 13.5 inches of overall length with a 7.5-inch handle. Just wow. Also, quick appreciation for cold steel. I do really appreciate that they put the specs on the outside. It's got an 8CR14 MOV blade, which isn't amazing, but for something that I still consider to be a budget knife in that under 100 Canadian dollar range, that's pretty impressive. So I do give props where it's due, right? Because I'm getting 6 inches of edge for less than $100. Outside of some fixed blades, even with fixed blades, to be honest, that can be a fairly tough thing to do. Cold Steel's warranty, they have an exceptional warranty and lots of images of the knife itself. So let's pop this guy open. Plain cardboard box, burn it, recycle it, do whatever you do with it. I really appreciate that because it's nice and simple and good for the environment. And then we have the dog poo bag. It's just so big. Dog poo bag, it is what it is. There's no real way of getting around that. And then here we have the knife itself. So it does feature a double safe lock, which is pretty cool. It has a plastic pocket clip that I'm actually not going to play with too much, but obviously not reversible pocket clip, one position pocket clip. It does look pretty okay, but we're going to see how it is with a little bit of time. I generally speaking don't super trust plastic pocket clips, but our double safe lock is in. So it is a liner lock with the double safe lock. Does it work in either position? It might only work. Yeah, okay, hold up. Is it just super stiff? It might just be super stiff, okay. Oh man. Not loving that. It's such a big friggin' knife. Okay, I can't quite figure out what's going on with the double safe lock. But there we go. So now, obviously, you can't unlock it, which just makes the whole thing a little bit stronger. And then that's super stiff. I hope that wears in a little bit, because as it is right now, that is really stiff. The lock bar itself isn't too bad. You've got pretty good access to the cutout on this side. It's just so big. Excuse my cat. It's just so big. Now, something I am interested in seeing is whether or not I can use this sort of forward or upper guard as a pocket deployer. It does seem like that should be able to happen, but I'm not 100% sure yet, and I am very interested in finding out. This is such a big knife. Just in the name of comparison here, let me find it. Here it is. This is my Kershaw Strata XL, which previously had been my largest knife, and it's over half an inch shorter in blade length alone. Like, this is genuinely a very large knife. This is what Cold Steel is primarily, of course, known for. They make very big knives. God, this is cool. Plastic handle, 8CR. Got your Cold Steel signposting. On a blade this big, it isn't quite as bad, but preference would still have, no signposting out of Cold Steel. Action out of the box actually feels really good. And it is very drop shotty, but a large part of that's just going to be how big this blade is. Alright. Let me grab a piece of paper. Yeah. So it is quite sharp out of the box. Obviously enough. Very large clip point blade. And it feels very well refined, actually. I mean, you can kind of see it with how well polished that is, but it's exceptionally well refined, which you don't always get on cold steels, in my experience. Sometimes they prefer a toothier edge, just the way things are. I am not upset about that whatsoever. Now, obviously, blade, especially blade shaped like this, it is going to do exceptionally well on the puncture. Yeah, it's going to do exceptionally well on my puncture test. Just the way that it is, everything about this knife is very, very combat focused. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the way that she be sometimes. Let's see how it is in a rubber cut. Oh, wow. That's actually kind of impressive. I was expecting a little bit of shouldering right here where the edge, sort of that saber height, flat grind. Flat? Yeah, flat grind. But it's all nicely knocked down. I mean, you can see it is nicely satin finished. Like, this is a very attractive looking knife for, again, I think it was like 85 bucks. So it's just so ridiculously big. And I do genuinely believe that this isn't going to be an awful thing to carry for a little bit. But it ain't going to be amazing either. This, I could definitely see this thing causing me some problems. Action is shockingly good, especially for such a large knife. Like, it is absolutely ready just to rock it out of the pocket, which I was not expecting. This massive cutout, it does give you amazing access to the lock bar, but it also creates this really awkward spot if you're gripping up here. This is not super comfortable to me. And you've got this sort of finger space, but I really wouldn't put my finger there. There's nothing protecting you from slipping up onto the edge. So if you choke back a little bit, this does become quite a bit more comfortable. But just being this far forward, maybe it's a little bit better in my left hand, just because the cutout is meeting more naturally with my finger. But in the right hand specifically, this isn't super duper comfortable. But again, you can just choke back a little bit onto this jimping, and this is absolutely amazing. Yeah, this is going to be a nice chopping knife, I figure. The ergonomics are not spectacular. I'm just going to go out and say that. The ergonomics are absolutely not spectacular. I'm not noticing a pocket clip, but that's just because this entire thing is so bulky out of the box that of course you're not going to feel the pocket clip specifically. At the same time, though, it's not the worst knife I've ever held. It's just not designed for comfort necessarily. Really and truly what this is a large, fun object. Double safe. Okay, yeah. I don't know what, it must have just been something in the track or just factory whatever. But now that I've used it a little bit, it is quite comfortable. Steel liners, obviously. GFN plastic handles. Not significant texturing on the sides, but the jimping on the bottom and a little bit on the top is just, it's enough to really get that feel for it. I'm excited to see how this thing does over the next little bit. It's going to be weird. Definitely going to be a bit of an adjustment, but I am quite excited. So, I will be back shortly. And we are back. So, I have actually been carrying this for a couple days. It's been a bit of an experience. It's not as bad as I would have thought it was. So, obviously the biggest thing carrying something like this is just going to be the massive size of it. It is a very long object. Like you just saw, you know, it's a 6-inch blade. That's pretty insane, which means the handle's like 7 inches. Your overall package is just fucking huge, right? There's no two ways around that. But given how much size it is, it actually wasn't too bad in the pocket. Mostly just because despite the fact that it is very long, it's not very wide. Like, getting into size comparisons a little bit early. But here's a buck 110 for comparison, right? And the entire length of it, except for the crossguard there, is going to be within the buck 110 silhouette. That being said, it is also quite thick, with like 4 capital. Yeah, you can see it's the same thickness as a buck 110 all the way throughout it, which is pretty insane. It's not uncomfortable. Like it is fairly hand filling, and these little sort of waves aren't really doing anything for me in terms of making it more or less comfortable to grip, but they're not bad. Choke up spot, this sucks. I wouldn't use it. Your finger can go up on the blade. But honestly, staying behind the guard isn't a bad spot to be. It's uncomfortable to reach over the guard, but just staying behind it for pretty much all tasks was perfectly fine. You have exceptional access to the lock bar thanks to this cutout right here. Like, that was one of the big things that I actually noticed, is this thumb stud cutout made for excellent access to that lock bar. I very rarely used the secondary lock. I did twice, I think. Once was when I was using this for like 15 minutes and I was putting it down between, and I just slipped it on because why not? Extra security is never a bad thing. But like, it's just a hard block. You can actually physically see it in there. You can see it pop up right there. So it's fine. Nothing particularly special, but it does work. Thumb stud action is fine. It feels like a choo-choo train, you know, chugga, 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 gonna get out. But it definitely doesn't have like whoop or power behind it. The flipper is quite a bit better. The flipper actually feels like it's got a little bit of urgency to it. And the pocket deployer, hooking this in the seam of your pockets to pop it out, worked absolutely fine. To be honest, once you have a knife that has that and you get used to using it, it's pretty natural feeling, and then you have your blade ready before you even think about it, right? So if I was working on the ground and needed to cut into some cardboard or something like that, you know, just slip it out of my pocket, poke right in, make my cut, close it back up. Like I did quite like that. And for a self-defense object, which, as much as we can try to place a utility value on something like this, this is a self-defense, this is a weapon, right? This is designed as a weapon. It is sold as a weapon. It is sold with the understanding that if you need to permanently incapacitate and or kill somebody with a knife, this will do a good job of doing it. And I did a little bit of training with it, did some drill work. It worked fine. It wasn't a very I didn't find it to be the most comfortable grip, especially in a thrust, just for me personally, which was to its detriment, but it made excellent slashing, and it is an extremely good piercer. Like, this is an excellent clip point profile for poking into things, right? Which makes a lot of sense. Excellent blade stability. I didn't really have any issues. 8CR is not my favorite steel in the world, but I mean, when it starts to go a little bit dull, you hit it with this drop and it pops back to life really easy just because of how soft it is, as long as you have good compound on it. And I imagine sharpening it back up would not pose a significant issue. Now for some size comparisons real quick. We've got our Civivi Chevalier and our Wii Banter. So as we can see, it is a little bit bigger than both, by which I mean I'm pretty sure oh no, it is slightly smaller than both. My apologies. But no, it is absolutely huge. But despite being so big, like you can see in terms of height, the blade itself isn't much taller than the Civivi Chevalier's. The grind isn't as tall as the Chevalier's is, and the blade stock is quite a bit thicker than the Chevalier's. But for what it is not bad. Same deal with the Banter. The blade stock and the grind are both higher, which makes it a much slicier profile on the Banter. But for being such a massive object, it did slice fine. Nothing excellent, but, you know, perfectly adequate is how I would describe that. And here it is, next to our Buck 110. And again, you can see it is absolutely dwarfing our Buck 110, which puts it comfortably into what I personally consider to be a large or extra large knife, quite frankly. And here it is next to a Zippo. So, oh, it does. Sorry, side tangent. I wasn't sure if I'd put fluid in this or not. Anyway, as you can see, it is it's big, right? Like this is a very long, large knife. There's no real two ways around that. But it's not all bad. Let's do the thickness check. I kind of showed this off earlier, but it is every bit as thick as the Buck 110 is, despite having a much taller handle profile. Like the actual handle profile is quite a bit bigger, which means this feels massive in the hand. No, that's not fair. Massive implies slightly uncomfortable. This is a big object, and it feels like it. And you can see it is quite a bit thicker than a Zippo, which is going to have its detriments in terms of carrying it, but I didn't think it was that, like, again, I genuinely didn't find this to be that bad to carry. So pluses and minuses on that front. There is this is the Luzon large. There is smaller versions of it. If you're gonna actually carry this every single day, I would actually recommend probably the small version. You know, like 6 inches is just a massive blade. A 4-inch version of this is way better day to day. But if you are compelled to carry it, I mean, it fit in my Levi's jeans for work, right? Like it wasn't bad to carry. It just is a larger object, and you are going to intimidate people if you bring it out in public, which, depending on your situation, may or may not matter to you. A lot of the time, I can get away with carrying a fixed blade knife on my waist. But even in situations where I'd be comfortable carrying a fixed blade knife, like farmers and stuff like that, might actually give me a second look for carrying this just because it's ridiculous, quite frankly. Tons of fun though. The last thing that I do want to cover is the pocket clip. The pocket clip is fucking awful. It is plastic. It doesn't, like, it has decent retention, but it feels like it's just half a second away from snapping all the time, which I do not like. And you have to take it off. Like you can see there are body screws underneath it, which is just a minor annoyance, admittedly, but was still an annoyance. And because I hate this pocket clip, I'm going to mention it. Yeah, it's big, it's kind of crazy. If you are slightly compelled towards something in this style, the small version would be a more reasonable option. But honestly, for what it is, and especially for under 100 Canadian bucks, like, this is a budget knife. This is probably the largest budget knife you can get outside of buying like a cheap machete or something like that. So I do think that it is recommendable if you are in the market for a larger knife. Just be aware of the fact that you are absolutely buying a weapon. Oh yeah, blade stock thickness. That was the other thing I wanted to mention. The blade stock thickness, and then that's going to be the end of it. It's going to be thick. Like, it just is. Oh, it's in fractions. Why are you in fractions? Give it to me. 158 thousandths, 157 thousandths, really. That's wild. Yeah. This thing is huge in every available dimension. That's kind of all I had to say on it. It's super cool, and I would strongly recommend getting one, even just to round out your collection. If you don't have an extra large knife, it's recommendable. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.